The bus wheel wheezed like an old body groaning in protest as it rolled to a stop. Port Harcourt, a city of endless hustle, chaotic beauty, and undying energy, became Ruby Diamond's newest chapter. The air was thick with the scent of fuel, hot tar, and roasted plantains. As she stepped off the bus, suitcase in hand, her heart felt like a pendulum swinging between fear and hope. Ruby Diamond, a slim, ebony beauty whose glow rivaled the sunlight, moved like someone trying not to take up too much space. Her skin shimmered in the humid air, and her eyes held the kind of quiet stories only silence could teach. At 28, with a freshly earned bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of Lagos, she had packed up her past and left Yobe behind. The first of two daughters, Ruby had been raised in a home where love was something you earned, not something you received freely. She had spent her life learning how to be small, how to smooth over chaos, how to survive without breaking. But now, she had chosen Port Harcourt. Not just for a job, not for love, but for herself. She rented a modest self-contained apartment at Roumaoué, far from fancy. But it was hers. It had a leaking tap, walls stained by time, and a window that offered a view of nothing but a neighbor's dusty zinc roof. Yet to her, it was freedom, a kind of sacred beginning. Her mother's voice rang in her head. "Have you found a church yet?" she'd asked on the phone. "No, Mama, not yet," she had replied, unsure how to say that she was still trying to find herself first. One breezy evening, she found herself at a quiet cafe tucked between a flower bouquet shop and a small store that sold handmade leather slippers. It became her little haven, offering solace in cups of zobo and chin-chin crunches. Her sanctuary, a place where she could sit, breathe, and believe, if only for a few minutes, that life could still bloom in strange soil. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and Ruby was in her usual corner of the coffee chin-chin on a napkin, her bottle of zobo sweating slightly in the heat. Her journal was open, but the words hadn't come yet. She was people watching, letting the city move around her like background noise. That was when he walked in, tall, fair, handsome in the kind of way that made strangers pause. Chizoba Werlu, an Ikwa man in his late 30s. Chizoba worked with a reputable oil and gas firm and earned enough to live, in the kind of luxury most people only dreamt of. He was a frequent customer at Spices and Glamour Cafe, the same cafe Ruby had turned into her personal haven. He had noticed her long before that Tuesday afternoon, always scribbling in her journal, always alone. And on this day, he finally made his move. He didn't look like someone who belonged in her quiet cafe. He looked like someone with too many options and not enough patience. His eyes, crystal blue and sharp, had a way of locking onto yours like they were reading your secrets. His lips, pink and full, curved with ease, promising softness. But beneath the polish was something darker. Chizoba, the first and only son of 5 children, had learned early how to command attention. He was married, but carried himself like a man unattached, a master of disguise. He wore charm like a designer suit, always tailored to fit the moment. Cunning, calculating, yet cloaked in sweetness. He was beautiful on the outside, irresistible, magnetic. But inside, a rot he masked with perfume, petals, and perfectly chosen words. He ordered a cup of tea and sat across from her without asking. "You always drink zobo with chin-chin?" he asked, his voice smooth like something bottled in London. Ruby blinked. "Only on days I feel like a queen," he smiled. "Then you must feel like royalty often." She looked away, but her lips curved. He noticed that was how it began. Ruby blinked. "Only on days I feel like a queen," he smiled. "Then you must feel like royalty often." She looked away, but her lips curved. He noticed. That was how it began. Bowl and beginnings. A week later, Chizoba took her out. Not to a fancy restaurant or some air-conditioned lounge, but to a roadside bowl joint tucked along Stadium Road. "This is my spot," he said, leading her through the smoky haze of grilled plantain and fish. The air was thick with pepper, the kind that made your eyes water and your nose run. But the food was worth it. Ruby licked oil off her fingers and laughed for the first time in days. Chizoba was warm, attentive, full of charm. He told stories that made her smile and laughed easily at her jokes, even the dry ones. They sat close, their knees brushing, the smell of spice and smoke curling around them like a shared secret. When she looked at him, he was already looking at her, and in that moment, the world around them melted away. Creed nights. It was a Friday night when he invited her out again. "Dress like you want to break hearts," he texted, followed by a winking emoji. Ruby laughed at the message but still spent 2 hours getting ready. He picked her up in a sleek black car and took her to Creed, one of the hottest clubs in GRA. The music vibrated through the ground, lights dancing on polished floors. She had never been anywhere like it. Inside, everything glowed neon signs, glittering eyeshadow, and a kind of reckless energy that only came alive after dark. Chizoba held her waist protectively as they moved through the crowd. People knew him. They greeted him with nods and sly smiles. Ruby just smiled and held on. They sat in the VIP section, drinks flowing, the DJ blending Afrobeats with old-school hits. At one point, Chizoba leaned close and said, "You don't have to pretend with me. I see the sadness sometimes. It's okay." She didn't respond immediately. But later that night, outside in the cool breeze, she told him part of her story. About growing up feeling invisible, about her mother's coldness, about being the girl who always apologized. He listened, really listened. Then he pulled her close and whispered, "No one's going to hurt you again. Not while I'm here." And in that moment, Ruby almost believed him. Gifts and gestures. The next morning, a dispatch rider showed up at her Romuola room with a brown paper bag and a handwritten note. "For the girl who made last night feel like art." Inside the bag was a silk scarf, a book of poems by Warzen Shire, and her favorite chin-chin tied with a red ribbon. Ruby pressed the note to her chest and exhaled. This was new. No one had ever given her a gift without wanting something in return. No one had ever noticed her little joys, let alone remembered them. Later that week, he sent her a playlist titled Zobo Dreams, full of soft soul and indie tracks that felt like warm evenings. She played it on repeat as she cleaned her room, smiled at her reflection, and added new lines to her journal.